Welcome back for another Torah Tuesday. We are picking things up in Exodus chapter 28, verses 22 through 30, which describes the stones that go in the little pouch on the high priest's chest in the Hushon. Last week, we studied the gemstones that are on that pouch. So if you haven't watched last week's video, you'll want to go do that first. I'm Dr. Carmen Imes, Associate Professor of Old Testament at Biola University, and I'm so glad you're joining me for this. I'm going to begin by reading from my translation from the Hebrew. You shall make upon the chestpiece corded chains, braided work of pure gold. You shall make upon the chestpiece 2 rings of gold, and attach the 2 rings upon the 2 edges of the chestpiece. You shall attach the 2 gold braids through the 2 rings at the edges of the chestpiece. As for the 2 ends of the 2 braids, you shall attach them upon the 2 settings. You shall attach them upon the shoulders of the ephod on its front face. You shall make 2 rings of gold, and place them upon the 2 edges of the chestpiece upon its lips, which is on the opposite side toward the inside. You shall make 2 gold rings and attach them upon the 2 shoulders of the ephod downwards in front of its face, beside its joint on top of the skilled embroidery of the ephod. They shall tie the chestpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod with blue cord, that it may be upon the chestpiece of the ephod, and the chestpiece will not come loose from upon the ephod. So Aaron shall bear the names of the Israelites on the chestpiece of decision upon his heart when he enters the sanctuary as a memorial before Yahweh continually. You shall set in the chestpiece of decision the Urim and Thummim, that they may be upon Aaron's heart when he goes before Yahweh. So Aaron shall bear the decision of the Israelites upon his heart before Yahweh continually. Okay, so we have been studying the garments worn by the high priest in Israel's sanctuary, in their tabernacle, and we've come to the place where we're learning about what goes in the pouch on Aaron's chest and how it's connected to the rest of his outfit. And what you probably noticed as I was reading is that God takes a lot of time to make sure that this pouch is stuck on the chest of the high priest. There's lots of instruction about how to connect it to make sure that it doesn't swing out, that it doesn't get lost, that it doesn't go wandering off. This, I think, is theologically important for reasons we'll discuss in a few minutes. The precise design of the chains is unknown. There's a lot of technical vocabulary in this passage for the chains and the cords and the braids. So are these chains that are then wound into cords and the cords are braided, or are is the gold turned into a cord and then the cords are braided and become a chain? Somehow the precise method of going from chain to cord to braid is not described. But it has to bear the weight of the breastpiece somehow, and it has to connect it to the ephod that he's already wearing. The purpose for the pocket on his chest was to hold the Urim and Thummim, or the Urim and Thummim, depending on how you want to pronounce it. These stones gave the authorized divine decision for questions that people had. The questions needed to be brought to the high priest, and then he could seek the Lord to get the Lord's answer. The meaning for the name of these stones is not entirely clear, and there's a couple of different proposals that I'll share with you. So some scholars think that Urim and Thummim refer to light and perfection. So the word light in Hebrew is or, and if you make it plural, it's orim. So urim sounds similar to orim, whereas the word for perfection is tam, T-A-M, and if you make that plural, it's tamim, and so that sounds similar to tumim. So some people have related it to light and perfection, and they've thought maybe these stones light up, or they offer light, shed light on something. Others have connected it to the word curses. The word for curse is arar, and an arar, if you make it plural, would be arim, which sounds like urim. So just a difference in the vowels. And then innocence is the same word that we talked about for perfection, tamim. So it's possible that it's light and perfection or curses and innocence. So in that case, perhaps if someone presented a problem to Aaron, he would reach inside the pouch, and whichever stone he pulled out would be giving like a yes or a no. Maybe curses is the no and innocence is the yes. It's really hard to know for sure. The Septuagint had trouble with these words, evidently. They translated them manifestation and truth. There's some debate on how many stones there were, and actually if they even were stones inside the pouch. We know there are gemstones on the outside, but what exactly are the Urim and Thummim, and why are they plural? Why are these words plural? Is this the plural of intensity? So this is referring not to multiple Urim and multiple Thummim, but actually just one of each, but the plural is used for intensity. We see this, I suppose, in the word Elohim, which is the word for God, and technically it's a plural, but it's used for the one God of Israel with singular verbs in order to indicate Yahweh's singularity, but perhaps the intensity of God's divinity requires a plural. So it's perhaps a plural of intensity, or maybe there's more than one stone, so more than one of each, so he can reach in and grab out a stone and not know what he's going to be grabbing. Many people assume that these stones functioned in a binary way, that is sort of like casting lots or drawing straws or whatever that gives a yes or no answer. So you just pull one out and it gives you a yes or a no. One man wrote an entire book on these stones. His name is Van Dam, and you can check the description to this video to get the full bibliographic citation for his volume. He believes that the messages given by the Urim and Thummim were more complex, not just a yes or no, but more complex messages. And he suggests that the stones would have lit up while the priest was giving an oracle. So maybe he'd pull out a stone, and if the stone was glowing, then that would show that the Spirit has empowered him to speak on God's behalf. And that's how people would be able to tell the difference between a human message and a divine message. So he concluded this by looking through the passages where the high priest actually uses the Urim and Thummim, and he concludes that this is more than a yes or no answer. They're giving battle strategies, giving more complex answers to questions. So you can check out the following passages that mention the use of the Choshen: Numbers 27:21, 1 Samuel 14:37-41, 1 Samuel 28 verse 6, Ezra 2 verse 63, and Nehemiah 7 verse 65. And if you look those up and read each of them, you'll see they offer kind of a range of ways that this object functioned. I don't know if there's any way to be sure how exactly it worked. The really important message that comes through from this part of the instructions is that divination must be centralized or authorized, and that's why we get so much emphasis on how to attach it so it doesn't come loose. God is requiring his people to come to the central sanctuary where his presence is and where he is properly worshiped so that the priest can make sure to speak on his behalf. He elsewhere prohibits other forms of divination. He doesn't want people going their own way to try to find out the will of God. He wants to centralize worship to ensure that people aren't seeking after other gods or seeking him in ways that are not authorized. So necromancy is prohibited in Leviticus 19:31. That's consulting the dead. There's a story of this in 1 Samuel 28 where Saul does this, but it is prohibited. Sorcery is prohibited in Exodus 22, verse 18. Witchcraft is prohibited in Leviticus 19:26. And there's another form of divination that was very common in the ancient Near East that's prohibited, and it's prohibited more by implication. So this is, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, hepatoscopy, which is reading the liver of an animal. This was quite an important form of divination for other nations. They would cut open a sheep, they would remove the liver, and then there were people who were trained to know how to read the dots and lines, kind of like palm readers today. They would open up a sheep and they expected that the gods would communicate to them through the size and shape of the liver, where its lines were, if it had any divots in it, or any other strange qualities. So there are ancient texts that describe how to interpret a liver as kind of the tablet of the gods. But in Yahweh's system of worship, he tells them in Exodus 29:13 to burn the liver. The liver is part of what they burn on the altar as an offering to Yahweh. And if you're burning it up, you can't read it. So this is probably God's way of saying, don't do it their way, do things my way. The high priest carries around these implements of decision-making on his heart. In Hebrew thought, the heart is the center of not just emotion, but thinking and will and decision-making. And so it's appropriate that when they want to know the will of God, they go to the high priest who's been carrying these stones close to his heart where he makes his decisions. This is God's way of saying, come to me to know what to do. And so it's a means of divine revelation where a faithful response to the moment is unclear. So you don't need to go consult the high priest to find out whether it would be okay to murder your neighbor. That's a clear prohibition in the Ten Commandments. But anytime there's something fuzzy where you're trying to find out the will of God, but there's not a clear instruction already given in the Torah, then you could go to the high priest and he could inquire of the Lord on your behalf. I hope this is helpful, and I hope you see the immediate relevance for the life of faith today, that we should be going to the Lord for our insight and for wisdom and not trying to find it in other places. The only true source of wisdom is the God who made the universe and everything in it. Have a great week.